$50,000 in debt with a credit score of 400. For most people, that's not a number you ever want to see attached to your name. It feels catastrophic. It feels like the financial system has officially written you off as a lost cause. And if you're sitting in that situation, you're probably asking yourself the same question millions of other people are asking right now. Should I just declare bankruptcy and start over? Or should I try to fight through this and actually repay the debt? Because here's the thing, neither option is great. Bankruptcy destroys your financial reputation for years. It makes it harder to get loans, harder to rent an apartment, harder to get a job. Some employers check credit reports, and some landlords will straight up reject you if bankruptcy shows up. But on the flip side, the traditional repayment path, when you're this deep in debt, often feels impossible. $50,000 doesn't get paid off overnight, especially not when interest rates are stacking on top of everything else. And if your credit score is already at 400, you're probably already struggling just to make minimum payments. So, which path actually makes sense? When does bankruptcy become the better choice? And what does a realistic scenario actually look like for someone in this position? The first thing to understand is that bankruptcy isn't actually a magic reset button, even though a lot of people treat it like one. When you declare bankruptcy, there are a few different types you can file under, and which one you choose matters enormously. Chapter 7. Bankruptcy is the one that most people think about when they hear the word bankruptcy. It's the nuclear option. You liquidate most of your assets, the court sells them, and the proceeds go to pay off your creditors as much as possible. Then, the remaining debt, the stuff that can't be paid, it just gets wiped away. Sounds good, right? Except, and this is a big except, not all debt gets wiped. Student loans almost never get wiped away through bankruptcy. Tax debt is extremely hard to discharge. Child support and alimony obligations, those stay with you no matter what. Secured debt, like mortgages or car loans, those don't really go away either, because the creditor can still seize the asset. So if you've got $50,000 in credit card debt, yes, Chapter 7 can wipe most of that. But if you've got a mix of different debt types, only some of it disappears. Then there's Chapter 13, Bankruptcy. This is the organized payment plan option. Instead of liquidating everything, you work out a court-approved repayment plan that lasts 3 to 5 years. You pay back what you can. The creditor fees and interest often get reduced or frozen, and anything left over after the plan ends gets discharged. It's less destructive to your financial life in some ways, but it means you're still making payments for years. You're still dealing with limited credit access. You're still carrying the weight of this debt for a significant chunk of your life. So let's talk about the actual damage bankruptcy does, because it's not just the 3 to 7 years it shows on your credit report. The immediate impact hits hard. Your credit score, which was already at 400, is going to drop even further for a while. We're talking 300 or lower. That means you can't get approved for normal credit products. You can't get a mortgage. You probably can't get a car loan. Some credit card companies will eventually offer you what's called a secured credit card, where you have to put down a deposit to get credit, but the interest rates are brutal. We're talking 25 to 30% APR. That's the kind of rate that makes it almost impossible to actually build credit rather than just accrue more debt. For employment, many jobs don't care about your credit score at all, but certain industries do. If you work in finance, if you're a government employee, if you work in law enforcement or security, a bankruptcy on your record can disqualify you entirely. Some employers won't hire you. Others might not promote you. It's not universal, but it happens often enough that it matters. Renting becomes a nightmare. Most landlords run credit checks. Many will automatically reject anyone with a bankruptcy on their record. You might find a landlord willing to take a chance on you, but expect to pay a higher security deposit or even monthly fees just for having that bankruptcy. But here's where the math actually starts to get interesting. Let's work through the $50,000 scenario specifically. If you have $50,000 in credit card debt With an average interest rate of 18%, which is roughly where rates are sitting in a high-risk borrowing environment, and you only make minimum payments of about 2% of the balance per month, that's $1,000 per month initially. The problem is that with 18% APR, you're paying out roughly $750 per month in just interest alone. That means only about $250 is actually going toward the principal. At that pace, you're looking at years and years of payments. We're talking decades potentially. And the total interest you'd pay, it could easily exceed the original debt. You might end up paying $80,000 or $90,000 total on $50,000 of debt just because you're stuck in minimum payment hell. So in that scenario, bankruptcy starts to look like it might actually make financial sense. But let's look at what repayment could look like if you could increase your payments. If you could scrape together $400 per month toward that debt, suddenly the math changes. You're still paying a ton in interest, but you're actually making progress. $50,000 at 18% interest with $400 monthly payments gets paid off in roughly 175 months. That's about 14 and a half years. You'd pay roughly $25,000 in interest on top of the principal. Still terrible, but you're not in payment hell forever. You're moving toward a finish line, even if it's way off in the distance. And here's the thing about that 14-year timeline. By the end of it, your credit score has actually been recovering the whole time. You've been making consistent on-time payments. That actually counts for a lot. Your score might go from 400 to 600 or 650 by the end. You'd actually be able to qualify for better credit products, maybe a car loan, maybe a mortgage on a house further down the road. You're building something rather than just clearing the wreckage. So when does bankruptcy actually make sense? Well, if your situation is that you have $50,000 in credit card debt and you genuinely cannot increase your payments above the minimum no matter what, bankruptcy is probably the better call. If you've exhausted every option, if your income is too low to ever pay this off, even if you dedicated your entire life to it, then staying in repayment is just torture with a 14-year timeline. Bankruptcy at least gives you a reset point. Even if it's a painful one, you spend 3 to 7 years rebuilding, but after that you're free. But if you have even a small amount of wiggle room in your budget, if you could realistically increase payments even a little bit, repayment actually becomes viable. And there's a third option that a lot of people don't know about, and that's debt consolidation or debt settlement. If you can negotiate with your creditors, sometimes they'll agree to settle your debt for less than you owe. Maybe you owe $50,000, but they'll accept $30,000 or $35,000 if you can pay it in a lump sum or over a shorter time frame. That requires money you might not have, but if you've got any savings or any ability to raise cash, it's worth exploring. Some debt consolidation companies offer services that help with this negotiation, though you have to be careful because the industry is full of predatory companies that charge fees and deliver nothing. The credit score issue is real, but it's also worth understanding what a 400 credit score actually means in this context. Lenders see a 400 score and they see maximum risk. They're not going to lend to you at normal rates, period. So you've already lost access to cheap credit. That's already happened. The question is whether a bankruptcy makes that even worse. And the answer is yes, it does, but only for a limited time. After bankruptcy, your credit score is even lower immediately. But then it starts improving faster than it would have if you were just carrying the debt and missing payments. If you're in the stage where you're stuck at 400 because you haven't paid on the debt in months, bankruptcy might actually be the faster path to financial recovery than continuing to ignore creditors and watch your score plummet even further. But if you're at 400 and you're still making payments, you're in better shape. Your score is low, but you're not in active default. Bankruptcy would actually be a step backward in that scenario. There's also a psychological component that doesn't get talked about enough. Carrying $50,000 in debt you can't pay for 14 years is a specific kind of torture. It hangs over you. It affects your mental health. It makes you anxious about phone calls. It makes you avoid bills. That stress has real costs. Some people actually describe declaring bankruptcy as emotionally liberating, even though it's destructive financially. They describe finally stopping the endless cycle of minimum payments and interest compounding and the shame. They're not stuck anymore. For other people, the shame of bankruptcy is worse than the debt itself. That's a personal calculation nobody can make for you. But it's worth acknowledging that the financial math isn't the only thing that matters here. Your mental health and your ability to actually function and earn money matters too. Here's what's actually worth doing if you're facing this decision. First, figure out your realistic income ceiling. Can you increase payments? What's your actual budget? If you can push yourself to $500 or $600 per month, repayment becomes real. Second, explore whether your debt is even dischargeable through bankruptcy. If most of it is student loans or tax debt, bankruptcy won't help as much as you think. Third, talk to a bankruptcy attorney. Initial consultations are often free. They can tell you specifically what your Chapter 7 or Chapter 13 would look like in your situation. Fourth, if your income is secure and can increase, consider the debt consolidation or settlement route. It requires cash up front, but it might be cheaper than bankruptcy or repayment. And finally, stop ignoring the debt. Whether you're going bankruptcy or repayment, avoidance makes everything worse. The moment you stop paying, your credit gets destroyed anyway. You might as well make a deliberate choice. For someone with $50,000 in debt and a 400 credit score, there's no universal right answer. Some people will make bankruptcy work better. Others will find that a combination of increased payments and potentially settlement negotiations actually solves the problem faster. What matters is that you run the actual numbers. You talk to an actual attorney and you make a decision based on your specific situation, rather than just assuming bankruptcy is the easy way out, or assuming you have to suffer through 14 years of payments that barely make a dent. If you want to understand more about how personal finance decisions impact your long-term wealth and what the actual trade-offs are between different financial choices, we've already made videos on credit scores, debt consolidation, and bankruptcy laws. You should be able to click that on your screen now. Thanks for watching, mate.